Inside Story Uganda, real source of political updates.
Realities should the country be confronting? Honorable Samuju.
I think the only recount that has succeeded so far is the one of Masaka. All the others have failed on the same account that...
boxes were tampered.
Yes. So that's why the one of Masaka has become a topical discussion. I agree with Honorable Norbert Mao. The legal regime, even if you don't change it, resolution of electoral disputes, it's extensively explained by the law. Go for a count, go for this, go for this. But unfortunately, because sometimes even cheating, because it's not just against us, people who cheat and don't want a voter count will go and bribe and make sure that boxes are tampered with. But there are also boxes, because even the handling of the electoral material itself, if you see them delivering and picking, and the quality that they are using, you have areas like Mukono. I saw Mukono North, where Kibule went and his agents drove away with the boxes, and that has happened in many other areas. So I think Masaka is just one example that illustrates the problematic nature of this election. And the Electoral Commission, I gave up long ago when we were in Soroti in a by-election. That time we were still in FDC, and NRM was cheating. Our agents who were complaining...
They are by-election, right?
Yes. The chairman, this chairman of the Electoral Commission, Vyabakama, came to a polling station in the morning that had been filled with the ballots, and our agents were complaining. He just ordered that they bring another box and the voting starts, and the agents got arrested, that they are disrupting elections. I have kept reminding people, 2001, when Aziz Kasuja, with all his shortcomings, was in charge of the elections, there were complaints of military, at that time I think either PPU or PGB, whichever name it was, they had taken over Rukonjiri. And Aziz Kasuja wrote to President Museveni, I still have that letter. He said, if you don't remove your soldiers from Rukonjiri, it's going to be very difficult for me to organize the elections there. Aziz Kasuja wrote. I don't think Vyabaka Makan. Chigundu was even kneel down speaking to Museveni. So even the failure of this biometric, the biometric machines themselves were ordered by Mr. Museveni. And the Honorable Mao sanitized it by bringing
statutory
regulations to give it effect.
On 24th
But the Electoral Commission was not prepared. And throughout, because you just go back and did their 2.5 years strategic plan, what they intended to do, it was not there. So part of the problem is that Museveni wanted it. He believed and kept saying that he was cheated, and therefore it was now his duty to stop rigging. So he imposes a biometric. Not adequate preparation had been done. They may even have discovered later that the shutting down of the internet affected them. So when it is back, the machines are themselves working. So this election, I think, has been run directly by Museveni and his son and the security. And Chigundu Byabakama is just giving face.
How about the turn-up? Does it speak to anything?
In Chira, we have 210,000 registered voters. On the presidential and parliamentary election, 15th, less than a quarter turned up, less than a quarter. Partly because first they were delivering materials late. This time I was surprised that materials for polling were brought in Chira a week before. This has never happened. A week before. Elections were for Thursday, and the Thursday before, elections are brought. I mean, materials are brought. And we witnessed the arrival. But on the polling day, they arrived at some polling stations, majority, after 9. Yet elections were starting at 7. And as they were arriving, the machines were not working. Effectively, voting started around 11. In some places, at midday. Some boxes, polling station did not open until after lunch. So you had some people who went away as a result of that. But also the faith, because the subsequent election should tell you about the turn-up. I have seen the debate in the media about presidential. I was just telling you during the break. Namataba, which is a village neighboring Bukasa, where I stay, on their register they have 10,000 voters. But the PFF councillor who won there got 204 votes. Then
there are 10,000 voters.
Registered.
The winner
has 204, followed by NRM at 170. So the total voters are not more than 500, but the registered voters 10,000. This is the sub-count and division chairpersons and councillors elections. So the faith is gone away, and particularly for this last cycle of election, because of the cheating that happened during the mayoral elections, I think people said we're just wasting time. So you turn up, you vote for a candidate, and then they announce another. And at least you announce the second, but how can you announce the third?
Councillor Katana, you've been chanting people power, sloganeering all the time that the people can overwhelm the state. Given the numbers of people who turn up now to elect, could it now be delusional to imagine that people power still exists?
Well, first of all is to agree that the low voter turnout is largely influenced by voter suppression. I reached the polling station around 7. I ended up voting at around midday. But number two, the confidence in the processes keeps declining on account of the machinations that end up handing to the people a person they did not vote for. But I think the essence of people power and the voice of citizens as a determinant factor for legitimacy and consent to govern is not restricted to polling day. And therefore, while people may have diminished confidence in the processes, I think it would be improper for anybody to encourage citizens to withdraw from civic duty of engaging in determining who becomes the leader.
Yeah, but here is a disenchanted mass.
Yeah.
That had a lot of steam. How it has all disappeared, God knows.
You know, Simon, I think these developments are not unique to Uganda, are not occurring here for the first time in the history of mankind. They have happened elsewhere, where you have Ben Ali giving himself, I think, 90 or 89%. Then a few years down the road, he's forced out of power. I think the challenge is in our electoral processes and the attendant anger, because this anger actually is not only restricted to the people in the opposition. Even people who support NRM, I have seen people across the country complaining about what transpired in some places who are even NRM people. I think should be a point of reflection for all of us, but especially those that have the power to undermine these processes, that one of the likely outcomes of the continued suppression of the voices of citizens is that it can lead to chaos in the country. In 1980 elections, the other day I was talking to an old man from my place in Oshenyi who told me he was a presiding officer in a place called Bunyaruguru. That the UPC people, on account of power they had that time, went and told them, said, even if you don't vote for UPC, we shall change because that time I think each party would have its ballot box, that we shall change the symbol of UPC and put it on the box that has the bigger number of votes. Because at that time they thought they had leverage and that they had subdued the population. The NRM people should not live under similar deception that they have subdued the population. The danger with injustice is that once you create a culture of impunity, injustice, it may outlive your power when you still live. Even when there is a change of government, instead of people taking you through a trial, they will summarily execute you because that is the culture that you have, you have babysat, you have enabled to grow in the society. So I think this should not only concern us who feel aggrieved because of the process that has differentiated us, but it should be a concern to the NRM people as well, that this continued injustice sets a stage.
But you've seen them in Zimbabwe and
Yes,
Chazanga.
and Chazanga.
Actually, before I get to Honorable Mao, Honorable Semuju,
Yes.
would you exonerate Honorable Mao of any blame for the mess that has characterized the elections?
You see, the trouble is that the Electoral Commission is supposed to be independent. So
Yes, he's at the helm of.
Honorable Mao represents it in Parliament.
To beg for money.
Yeah. But it's supposed to be independent.
Process.
So what I want, because of that, he may not be blameless, because for us in Parliament, it is him that we ask. I remember when he was sworn in, we were very happy, and even the Speaker said now reforms. He had even promised they are before a cabinet, they were never brought. So because he's the face of the Electoral Commission in Parliament and elsewhere, and his assignment is justice and constitutional affairs. You may use that ground to blame him, but the Electoral Commission is supposed to be independent of everybody. Yeah.
So then, Honorable Mao, if you were in charge, what would you do better?
And he's the chairman of the Electoral Commission.
No. Because he's now at the helm. I think he's the one to call the EC boss to order and to realign things. What would you do?
You first the Electoral Commission should send clear messages that there will be no elections if there is impunity and interference from external actors. That's what Stephen Akabwai did in Gulu. The moment he saw that fake ballots were being brought, he nullified the elections. And that is it. When there's chaos in the football pitch, the only thing the referee can do is to stop the match. So when people realize that everybody is going to lose, you lose money, then eventually you start restraining yourself.
So has EC negated on its role as the referee?
It is important for the EC to be more assertive and to make it very clear as to what will be acceptable and what will not be acceptable. And then you need the security forces and even the people who have power now, we who are in the government, we should realize that ultimately we want to serve the people. I wish the people for whom elections are rigged would really serve the people and deliver on the expectations of the people. If really somebody is going to rig elections for me, it must be for some very noble objective. Either I am going to change the lives of people, but if the purpose of rigging is simply to give me an opportunity to earn a salary and so on. I think that is not totally
Honorable,
acceptable.
if I took you back to the massacre scenario, do you think the new MP now subverted the will of the people?
You mean
Namere. Because initially they had declared Narubowa as duly elected with a landslide.
as to who eventually becomes the MP elect, either on account of election petitions and so on, I think that is not something for which you blame an individual. So I would excuse Justin Namere herself, but I look at the facts. I want to go and study what you have put on the table. You said that,
There are machinations.
that something unusual happened. It is unthinkable, mathematically even, that 100% of the votes in a ballot box can be for one person. You know, if that really is the case, you know, if even thieves steal and leave something little, if you steal everything, then you are not even a good thief. But I want to investigate that and find out what happened. What we have got to insist on, and I don't mind if anybody blames me. You know, the president was the main advocate for the BVVK kits. He was the main advocate. I went with a delegation of Electoral Commission to persuade the president to direct that a lot more money should be allocated for procuring those BVVK machines, because we had panicked that the batteries would not last even the whole duration of the election. So procurement was done to make sure that there's even a reserve machine based on the example of Ghana. And the purpose of those machines was to ensure that you can verify whether the ballots in the box match the record in the machines. But I have to be very frank tonight and say that not everybody was unanimous in their support for the machines. There are people who believe in rigging, and for them those machines were a nightmare. And I wouldn't put it beyond.
So there was no goodwill across.
I think there are some people who were fearing those machines. If our police stations had, for instance, lie detectors, I think many people would be worried. You have seen how people even don't want CCTV cameras in certain places. For me, I'd even proposed body cams, that presiding officers should have body cameras that film everything that is going around. So if, to me, the most serious allegations are those of collusion between those who want to rig elections and election officials, because that now undermines the very essence of free and fair elections.
What does the future of electoral democracy in Uganda look like in the midst of these new patterns? You've had the new trend now of denominations. Now we are going into irregular recounts.
Uganda is on a journey. Remember, we never even had leaders who are democratically elected. Professor Mamdani famously talked about the fusion of legislative, executive, and judicial power in the village chief. Those were people who were not even elected. The same person imposes a tax by decree, and if you don't pay, he arrests you, and then he tries you and imposes the fine on you, basically fusing all those powers. We moved away from that. We went into a system of elections. I think those elections of 1962, they they remain a scar. As you know, like in Tanzania and Kenya, certain parties won elections. Here in Uganda, DP won elections, but because Buganda boycotted, the powers that be, the British, decided that there would be a second election. There was no second election in Tanzania. There was no second election in Kenya.
Fast forward, does anything tell you that Uganda's elections are moving from bad to worse?
Sometimes when you hit rock bottom, then the only place to go is up. I believe that given that the victims are across the board, because the lamentation started with even the primaries. So now that the victims are in all political formations, it's my hope that we will have a core of people who can continue advocating for serious reforms, including thinking of, for instance, an upper house to balance the country. If you have a small parliament of 300, and because some people will have fewer MPs where there's sparse population, then you balance it using the upper house, the way it is done in America. So I want to assure those who are watching this show that the only thing you really have is hope. Do not lose hope.
Honorable Samuji, on that very note, has the country hit rock bottom on electoral democracy?
I don't even know whether we'll be able to pick it and where to pick it from. Because the institutions of the state have all been captured. And the individual NRM leaders in their own areas are like Somali's warlords. Where they are, they determine how things, because you see, when the unopposed phenomenon started, I thought it would stop on one or two people. It spread. I think by the time we went through the nomination, we had 15, then it became 17. The behavior of individual NRM people who feel entitled, you saw what happened in Mukono with Chibule. You saw Nambi at the Kampala Tare Center. And I think up to now she must be feeling very bad that how comes the others were announced and it is me who is not announced. Now, Namere in Masaka. And I have heard her, she's for us, we're a new stock, you will see us. What has happened in my own area has never happened. That you have councillors after winning election, they go to the Tare Center, and those who came through are the ones being announced. Some of them are children, university students, who are crying. You see, at my age, when you lose an election, you've lost it. Even when you are cheated, you can put it up with it. But these are university students we have asked to stand as councillors, being cheated, and they are crying. You don't even know what to do with them. And if it was localized, I would say, okay, for us, we are unlucky. But here, Entebbe is crying, Katavi is crying, everybody is crying. So this is the worst election that we have had, at least in the areas where I've been able to follow. But when you hear stories of others, in Western Uganda, I think it is in 2001, during when Besigye was a candidate, that they were voting for people. You remember, was he a bishop or a father who arrived and he was told, for you support Besigye, you have already voted for you, you want to go and dig. If you hear stories in Zimbabwe. So that trend has come back. There are areas in Western Uganda where voters arrived and they are told, but we finished voting, we wanted to go and dig. There are videos of military people voting, taking ballots and staffing. And these stories, because at Parliament where I am, you have victims who have gathered after this exercise. So you hear stories from all corners. So this is the worst election. If
it presents opportunities, like Honorable Mao says. It's now time, since everyone is crying, it's now time to sit and sanitize.
I am not sure whether we've not lost it. I am not sure. Because the next elections are threatening to be the worst. And I sympathize with the one who will be in charge of electoral commission.
Do you appreciate the fact that the country has hit rock bottom and perhaps the future of elections is bleak?
Maybe hit something beneath the bottom.
Yeah. I agree entirely. When you talk about everyone complaining, but there are also those who are just thumping, over 71%. I don't think Namere, for example, is complaining. I don't think the NRM chairman in Mukono is complaining. Why? Because he's a beneficiary of the injustice, but he doesn't know that in the next cycle, he might be the victim. The danger with the organization of elections for performative purposes, not for purposes of obtaining consent, is that when because the numbers keep reducing, and even when you would previously be able to cheat minimally, now you are forced to do it on a grand scheme. But also with decreasing levels of legitimacy, there is always the desire to give yourself an injection. First of all, to discourage those who oppose you and their supporters, to show them that the journey they are pursuing of challenging you through electoral means has no future, but also to give the supporters you have the image that you enjoy a lot of support. I've given you examples. Bashir, before the eventual collapse, I think had been giving himself 80 and above. Ben Ali in Tunisia, the same. So it happens everywhere, especially with the regimes that have been in power for a long time, but also because they have got away with a lot of impunity. It emboldens them to do more.
Okay. Do you agree, like Besigye has always argued, that elections are increasingly becoming meaningless and participating in them would legitimize the regime?
To a big extent, these machinations in the minds of the population, elections seem to be becoming meaningless. But I don't think unless you are picking up arms to go to the bush and fight, or you have prepared something else, I don't think the solution is in withdrawing. Because when you withdraw, then you have enabled the one who has made them seemingly meaningless.
And when you participate?
You have helped them to achieve their objectives.
And when you participate?
I believe that, for example, PFF, if it's not an election time, may not be allowed to go and hold a rally in Kasese. You have seen it. But during campaigns, they have been in Kasese, they have been everywhere, they have campaigned. The implication is that in the long run, the civic awareness built across the country and over time may be the game changer. It may be through an election, it may be through citizens' action and uprising like it has happened in other countries. It may be also pressure built on the regime to the extent that it will listen to the voices that are talking about reforms and things of that nature. So I don't think the solution to the problems would be withdrawing.
Thank you. I want us to switch gears, gentlemen. The big headline that's trending now is about Mao's bid for speakership. Initially, it was corridor talk, but when he came out recently at a press conference, it further cleared the air. Honorable Mao, is it true you want the speakership? And who is asking you to stand?
The former President Binaisa famously said, every rumor in Uganda is true. And he started by saying that Kampala is a city of 7 hills and 7 rumors a day. And all the rumors are true. Another person said, never believe a rumor until it is denied. I want to be very explicit that when I was declared as the winner of the parliamentary seat of Laro Peche, a lot of people started talking about the prospect of me being the Speaker of Parliament. And the only way you can become Speaker of Parliament is if you are elected in a secret ballot by the members of Parliament. Now, there are many of those who are urging me are not necessarily members of Parliament, but Parliament is a people's house. And those who are going to vote for the Speaker, they represent those same people who don't sit in that Parliament. And citizens have certain expectations, particularly at this time in our history. I therefore reflected on it and decided that it is a good thing if people believe in you.
I'm cautious to believe that anyone is asking you to stand. There was a time you peddled this narrative that you had a meeting with the president and you talked about transition, then the president publicly came out and disowned you. Could this be another lie from Mao?
Well, as usual, Kagwa, you are gaslighting me, and you are really running away from the topic that you said we should debate. My response to what you have just said is that we have a cooperation agreement, and peaceful presidential transition is there in black and white, and the president signed it. And so you can believe what you want to believe.
Okay.
But the cooperation agreement that we signed is about a peaceful transition in Uganda. It is about national reconciliation. It's about national dialogue and constitutional reforms.
Back to the speakership, yes. What kind of breath are you bringing in?
I don't think it is really about that now. I think the real question now is whether my candidature is viable. I believe my candidature is viable. And that's why I announced that I'm carrying out consultations. And in the next few days, I will announce what is normally called an exploratory committee. I do not want just to raise dust. I want to present a substantive alternative to what we have now.
Honorable Semuju, what would make Mao the man to watch in the race for speakership? At least you've been there thrice and you know the shenanigans that play out in the whole process.
I stood for speakership. I got 15 votes, where 100 and I think either 6 or 9 opposition MPs. The trouble with the MPs, everybody will tell you, I'm going to support you.
Oh, really?
Yes, even Kadaga.
That's how all Ugandans are.
People who had pledged to nominate her, on the nomination day disappeared. She had to assemble another team. Mao will certainly be a very good speaker. He was a very good MP, I've said this 100 times. His knowledge as a lawyer, his experience. But that's not what the NRM is looking for. I remember, and Mao must have been an MP at that time when the Honorable Ben Watcher nearly became a deputy speaker. The president met the NRM caucus. The NRM MPs were very happy with the Honorable Ben Watcher because as a chair of the Committee on Rules and Discipline, when court outlawed voice voting, and I think the judgment of court was that bills were supposed to be processed by the Committee on Rules, So the opposition thought that Ben Wacha would fail the processing of a new constitutional bill that I think was brought by Mayanja Nkanyi. But Ben Wacha said, this is my job as the chair of a committee. How can a committee be asked to work? And I say, I'm not going to do it. So the NRM MPs were very happy, and they wanted Ben Wacha to become, I think, a deputy speaker. But when Museveni met them, he said, you see, because of his principle, you can't have him as a speaker. Government is not run that way. Some names you may need to divert a bit from the law. And if you have a man like Ben Wacha who has even disappointed his own people because of his principle, then we're in trouble. So that became the reason for him not to become a speaker.
So what would be the odds
so
for Mao?
the trouble that the Honorable Mao has now is that he has a cooperation agreement with NRM. So he works with NRM. So the opposition can have Honorable Mao as their candidate, certainly. And the NRM, from what I read, is that they have announced their candidates. Muliro was complaining they followed no process. And this parliament is no longer looking for a good speaker, for a person who was qualified to be a good speaker. That ended. Because the secondaries became speakers because people valued their legal knowledge and said these ones will make very good speakers. We've moved away from that. So Mao doesn't qualify to be an
It would be a tall order. In the current scheme of things, it
He's
does.
overqualified to be a Speaker of Parliament, so they need someone who is not very far from Nabanja.
Well, we need to take a very short